Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's a good way to start a radio talk show host, especially this one because we are constitutional-oriented, a constitutionally oriented conservative call-in talk show. The Second Amendment, the First Amendment, all of the Bill of Rights are things that are discussed at length on Tall Tales, because here on Tall Tales, individual rights and freedom are valued. Let's start out with our Zemi-Cottney portion of the show. And today, Michael San Nicolas was of some assistance to both of the newspapers because they both wrote pretty good editorials. Way to go, Michael. And here's the headline in the Daily News editorial. Our view, every Guam resident should consider Delegate Michael San Nicolas's warning. No! Congressional Delegate Mike San Nicolas told lawmakers Monday that as the island emerges from the greatest danger since World War II, we have a chance to enter a golden age of prosperity not achieved since the 90s. That era of prosperity would be propelled by an infusion of federal money. San Nicolas also gave senators a warning. We will not see a similar confluence of circumstances that will bring our credit ratings up and increase our debt ceiling capacity like we have today, which means the people in this room, and he's talking about the legislative chamber, to include myself, if we screw this up, we screw it up permanently. The warning should carry beyond the Guam Congress building to every island resident, not to mention our governor. We have had a substantial amount of help from the federal government over the past year, and pandemic unemployment assistance to stimulus payments to business incentives to better technology and connectivity for students. San Nicolas and his colleagues made sure that the other territories were included in these programs, and steps were taken to remedy past problems with federal support. Improvements were made for the earned income tax credit reimbursement. No, that's not correct. Improvements were not made for the earned income tax credit reimbursement. The earned income tax credit reimbursement was created. Now, when people talk about the earned income tax credit, they don't realize it has two dimensions. We need to talk in terms of the internal, as were the earned income tax credit, which is a tax credit against a taxpayer's liability, except a lot of taxpayers don't have any tax liability. So for them, earned income tax credit is a payout. So what we're going to be reimbursed is not the tax credit, but the earned income tax credit payout. Well, I've explained before, we really don't have to pay the earned income tax credit payout, but we do, and we're actually better off paying it out if the feds will reimburse us because it puts new money into the economy. More than $600 million in American Rescue Plan money has the potential to improve public safety, education, public health, and the economy. Yet St. Nicholas's warning should remain in the minds of every elected official and every resident. We need to ask ourselves as a community and as individuals, are we using this money wisely? Are we making decisions that will build a future for our children? Well, the answer to that is no, not so far, because the first example is remember that some money was going to be used to provide some support to people. It started out as the RISE Act. And Lou did not sign it. She allowed it to become law without her signature, but she didn't like it very much. And she said because it doesn't provide for a payment to government officials and federal employees. So she waited until the next cash was to come along, and then she said, I'm going to create something called the All Rise Act, and I'll follow the framework of the RISE Act, but I'm going to pay government employees too, which made absolutely no sense whatsoever, none at all. Because the initial RISE Act, the statute, which will never be implemented, was to put money in the pockets of people who lost their jobs. But Lou, that wasn't good enough for Lou. She had to put money in the pocket of people who not only didn't lose their job, but got paid for staying home. This is not using that federal money wisely. It's squandering it. So we can't keep doing that. Are we making decisions that will build a better future for our children? Are we making Guam safer, more resilient, more attractive for visitors, more attractive for investors? There could be a very bright future for the island. Guam Community College is offering a series of boot camps that are helping workers build new skills. The island's business leaders have joined together to focus on developing new industries. Officials are trying to get children back in school and workers back in their jobs. We need to take advantage of the opportunities we're being offered and make careful choices about our future. Otherwise, as St. Nicholas said, we screw this up, we screw it up permanently. Yeah. Now, talking about screwing it up permanently, I want to contrast St. Nicholas's speech, which was uplifting, forward-looking, inspiring, right? And coincidentally, the kind of position that I would like to see Guam take. I've mentioned this before. I'm not urging it. I'm just saying this is what would make me happy. This is what the position we should take. We're good at what we do out here. We're tough hombres. We can handle all kinds of adversity, but we're more than willing to make a contribution to our country. Parenthesis, we're not going to be whining about some speech that some Navy captain made in 1904 and then come to the U.S. Treasury, to the president with our hat in hand, saying, critical race theorists, and you really did bad things to us, so now you got to give us money. That's not what St. Nicholas said. Now, which one you think is going to work better? Here's what Lou presented to the United Nations. Under the Biden administration, the United States has been proactive in recognizing the inequity of the relationship between themselves and the territories. While a recognition of historical harms and injustice caused by the insular cases and the lack of national suffrage has been a long time coming and must continue to be pursued, our administrating power is presented with yet another chance to certify, as well rectify, its colonial past and resolve Guam's political status. The military buildup directly impairs the ability of the indigenous Chamorro to self-govern and threatens to cause additional and irreparable harm to the land and sea environments on and around Guam, etc. Despite harmful and significant impacts of these colonial byproducts, the U.S. military's unchecked actions within the lands and waters of Guam only serve to compound these problems and further hinder the achievement of our full social, economic, and political potential. So, that's great, Lou. Let's go whine, cry. Please feel sorry for us. We're so downtrodden. You've beaten up us on us so badly. This is after a couple $2 billion worth of assistance has come flowing into the island.
I thought that those type of fake accolades ended when Obama received the medal. What was it? The
Nobel
Peace Prize.
Yeah.
Before he was even in office.
Before he ever did anything.
And now he's just giving accolades to Biden's administration for what?
Yeah.
He hasn't done a thing for this island here.
But he has to, because the United States has beaten up on us so badly. So,
she's like flinging dung at us.
She is. She really is. She really is. So, someone told me the other day, I don't know how serious this is, but, St. Nicholas's speech and Therese bucking the traces here more than once, the latest time being with Bill 112, suggests that there are Democrats laying the foundation for a Michael St. Nicholas candidacy. And if I were to vote today, that'd be a really easy choice. Keep doing it, Lou. Keep whining and crying and asking for sympathy and telling the president what a terrible job the United States has done as the steward of this island. And we will not see a reelected Lou Leon Guerrero. All right. Good. I got to get my blue pencil there. I got a feeling I'm going to need it. All you folks out there in Facebook land, I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not using a headset taped together with Scotch tape today that came apart. I have a really comfortable headset, and I want to thank Waspahaki, better known as John Palau, for that. Very comfortable, John. Fit really well, very comfortable, very clear sound. I really appreciate it. Besides that, it looks so much nicer. Wow! Yeah. And, I don't want to put too much emphasis on vanity. So long as I look good, I don't care so much about vanity, right? Yeah, okay, let's go to the Post. Details on spending remaining $600 million must be disclosed to the public soon. There's more than $600 million that the government of Guam will be able to spend out of the generosity of the federal government. The federal government has provided or committed to provide nearly $2.5 million to help our island get through the COVID-19 pandemic. And I gotta check my notes again. I think that's what Lou was talking about. Yeah, I think that's exactly which, despite the harmful and significant impacts of these colonial byproducts. No! Colonial, $2.5 billion worth of colonial byproducts.
There was an article featuring the carabao here on Guam. That's a colonial byproduct.
It is indeed, yeah. As is
A much celebrated one.
The pig.
The chicken.
The chicken, the cow, yeah. All right. By the way, I don't know if I don't think I ever explained this to you, but the way, if you were to use the Chamorro sense of direction, it doesn't match up very well with north and south.
They're not what they call the compass points.
No. And one of the directions is Lago. So Lago is that way. Yeah. So one of the colonial byproducts is the dog. And the dog is referred to as Lago, right? Which is very close to what people who are of the North American gestation are referred to. For them, it's Gilago, or sometimes Gatlago. All right, back to the Post here. Now, as the pandemic is winding down, at least for Guam and at least for now, the money flow from the federal government is slowing down. Soon the federal government could turn off that financial aid stream, but GovGuam still has more than $600 million that it can spend. And the sooner we, the public, will see the details on the proposed spending for that money, the better for our community. Maybe it's time for another closed-door meeting. No, wait a minute. If it's a closed-door meeting, we're not going to be able to see, are we? As officials have previously said, this might be one of the last times in a long time that we will get this magnitude of financial assistance from the federal government. We hope that the $600 million plus plan will be shared to the public, even in draft form. It only makes for good governance when the governor and her administration will allow the public to see the plan even before it becomes finalized. Of course, transparency is a good thing, hard to find. We also hope the administration will make good on the commitment to pay the RISE Act. She's not going to pay the RISE Act. I've just explained that, which provides for direct one-time cash relief to island residents. It will be sorely needed now that other pandemic relief programs are coming to an end. Funding for the third economic impact for Guam is nearly tapped out. Many may have already spent it. The federally funded food distribution programs are also coming to an end. It's very likely that our community will see federal financial aid dry up before the over 20,000 jobs tied to the tourist industry are fully restored. The tourist industry is reopening, but it's not expected to surge to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon. There will be lean days ahead before tourism booms again, if it ever booms. The reality is people still need help. The governor's announcement last week to subsidize the wages for newly hired workers up to a certain amount is a welcome move. We need more of these solutions. Solutions that are people-centric can only help our community rise up. So, pretty good editorials from both of them.
You notice whenever they mention this RISE Act, they never say, we hope the administration will make good on the commitment to the All Rise Act.
No.
They only referenced the initial original one.
Yeah. And of course, so much of what goes on is not simple, but so much of what is talked about with a simple interpretation. So Raging Lee introduced the RISE Act. And the RISE Act provided, was it 800, 600, 800, yeah, for everyone with a means test. But it said, we're not paying this to government employees, local government or federal government. And as I mentioned earlier, Lou said, well, I'll let it, but there's no, and then Lee's bill also said, use federal funds first. If not available, use local funds. And of course, we all know that because of the case called Wong versus Kamina, these monies that come from the United States government are not subject to the appropriation process. Lou basically can spend them however she wants. So a bill that appropriates money coming from the feds is a nullity. So that's what Lee said. So the governor said, I don't like it because it discriminates against government employees. And the Attorney General wrote back and said, rational state purpose, giving it to people
Nope.
who were laid off? No. Come on, Lee, get sorry. So she did nothing until the next chunk of money comes along. And now she says, well, I've got the All Rise Act. I will pay out in accordance with what the RISE Act, in other words, the same means test, et cetera. I'll use the federal money so I don't actually have to pay it out of the local statute. But I'm also going to pay government employees because it's fair. And I'm going to call it the All Rise Act. So it's not the RISE Act. Yeah. Okay, so I'm kind of stuck with a dilemma here today. I've got two pretty good, for so long I was stumbling along with not even one good editorial. So I'm going to do something that's without precedent here. I'm going to give 2 blue stars today. One for the Post, one for the Daily News. And I've got Lou's Political Destiny article here. No blue star for Lou. F- for Lou and Tony Bobota's speech at the United Nations. Let's stop whining, folks. Let's convince people that we are an asset, not a liability. That we're really good at what we do. We're tough, we're hard charging, we're capable, and we're a good place. We're the kind of place that you want to make sure that you treat right, because that's who we are. All right, let's take a short break and we'll come back to the card.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Hafaday, this is Congressman St. Nicholas. Your congressional office would like to remind you that pandemic unemployment assistance is set to expire on September 6th of this year. We encourage the people of Guam to seek out active employment as much as possible, as jobs continue to remain limited, and we want to prevent hardship for our people at the conclusion of the PUA program. Thank you, and si tu'us ma'ase.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Before I plunge into the card here, I've got a caller on the line that wants to make his mark, and he usually does. So go ahead and make your mark, Mark.
Good afternoon, Judge. So I was trying to get on right at the end of your show yesterday when we were talking about, Dr. Underwood's little story there and talking about the states and how tomorrows were treated. And my dad was in the Air Force in the early 50s during the Korean War, and he was actually the war ended, and he never finished pilot school, or I'm not exactly sure what he was doing, but I know he was working on planes, and he turned and went to University of Kentucky for engineering for college. And when he got there and he decided to get his license, he was listed down as white, even though he was pretty brown. So he got on a bus one day. He did kind of the opposite of Rosa Parks. He got on a bus one day, and the front was full of the white people. So he went to the back and sat down, and the bus driver would not move the bus until he walked back across the line, dividing the bus, and had him stand up in the front, even though there were seats available in the back.
That's a great story, Mark. And
yeah, so and he was as dark as some of the people in the back, but because the federal government recognized Chamorros or residents of Guam as not being colored, he was identified as a Caucasian.
Well, it's a good story, and it really highlights the absolute insanity of racism based on physical characteristics, doesn't it? And
it does.
And there's no question about it. It was really bad in the United States, especially the southern, Kentucky South. And I got to take a dig at when the Democrats ran the place, right?
Yep, Southern Democrats.
And now we want to keep doing the same thing, but we want to call it critical race theory. We want to do the same darn thing, having learned nothing from the past. But I really thank you for sharing your story, Mark. And it's a classic man bites dog story.
Yeah, it sure is. You have a good rest of your day, Judge.
Thank you very much for calling.
I don't want to brag about my privilege, Bob.
Yeah.
But on my birth certificate, I was born in a place called Hacienda Heights La Miranda in California.
Uh-huh.
So you can guess the kind of a cultural community there is over there. Mm-hmm. And with my last name, Martinez, my dad's name's Antonio, my mom is Maria. On the race, it says white. So I'm hoping that gets me to the front of the line.
Yeah, that's and some really good people. Martin Luther King, the dissent in Klitzkie versus Ferguson advanced this idea of a colorblind constitution and a colorblind country, where these personal details are interesting, but they're not conclusive. They shouldn't serve as an advantage or a handicap for anybody. They should just be something that's there, and we don't have to pay any attention to it because we're, figuratively speaking, colorblind. But if you say that now to those who practice critical race theory, you know what you're branded? A racist. Yeah. That's just one more mechanism that well, let's see, what is the two groups are the gosh, I've just got so tied up here in cultural racism, the oppressors. Yeah. The oppressors advance this colorblind, the idea of colorblindness as a way of keeping BIPOCs down, black indigenous people of color. Yeah. So there we go. And thank you very much, Robert Underwood, for once again stepping forward as the Westpac distributor of critical race theory. And an interesting thing about critical race theory is that those who are advancing it usually can be identified, or often can be identified by by coming forward as those who say, there's no critical race theory. This is just people exercising freedom of speech. We've been talking about this for a long time. There's no real critical race theory, so all these laws are misguided. That's Robert, right? Yeah. Okay, taking a look at today's card, I've still got Bavacqua versus conservatives on the card. I guess I've talked enough about it. I want to finish up Bavacqua versus America, and then I've got Shea and Therese, Shea versus Therese plus Troy. I've got Tina versus Insular cases, Brandeis University versus picnics, New York appellate judges versus Rudy, and so on. So I guess I've got somebody dialing in here before I jump into the first item on the card. Never mind. Just one of your buddies, huh, Tony? Jose? Yeah, so yesterday, Robert Underwood, I went through Robert Underwood's column, and he said, he was talking about conspiracy theories, and he said some really silly things, like, pointing out that there are some people that think that there are conspiracy theories that are not, let's see, that are not observable. Well, that's the way with conspiracy theories. And he talks about labeling, that that people who are saying Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays see themselves as striking a blow against political correctness. And then he goes on to say the latest label is critical race theory. At its root, it is a historical social analysis about the role and effects of race in our lives. Various forms of critical race theory have been in American society since its very beginning. Just wrong, just dead wrong. It's like saying 2 and 2 are 5. It's usually worked the other way. According to many of the founding fathers of the United States, the racial characteristics of Africans made them suitable for slavery, and the savagery of indigenous people meant that taking their land was the best for all concerned. Not so. Critical race theory actually had its genesis in something called the Frankfurt School, Germany, 1922, a group of Marxist scholars who left Germany when Hitler came to power in 1933, went to Columbia University, started something called the Institute of Social Research, propounded the theory of cultural Marxism or neo-Marxism, which holds that Marx was wrong when he said that there would be a proletarian uprising in the United States, that the workers would arise to overthrow the bourgeoisie and establish their own communist utopia. They found that this was just wrong, dead wrong, during World War I, where good German workers would kill good French workers and vice versa with great aplomb without ever thinking about overthrowing the bourgeoisie. So the Frankfurt schoolers were still intent on establishing this Marxist utopia. So their idea was what we've got to do is hollow out the institutions of the West, Europe, North America, etc., their universities, their governments, etc., and in the process show them that they're really getting screwed, because if they think they've got a pretty good deal, they'll never embrace Marxism. And that's exactly what they've done. Guys like Theodor Adorno, Horkheimer, I have the names in my notes. So this went along until a guy named Antonio Gramsci came along, who's obviously the inspiration of Michael Bavacqua. And Gramsci is the one who really came along with the whole idea of identity politics. Get the oppressed, that is, the non-white folks, to group themselves in various oppressed groups, race, sex, whatever, and at the same time, of course, that you are encouraging sexual anarchy, and encourage these people that or train these people that they'll never, that everything that they do must be seen through the eyes of racism, because everything that the oppressors do is guaranteed to keep them on the top and the BIPOCs on the bottom. So this came along, this stewed along kind of under the radar until the 60s came along, and we had guys like Marcuse come along. Yeah, what was Marcuse's first name? Yeah, it'll come to me in just a second. So, the real radicals, the SDS, Students for Democratic Society, the backers of Kennedy, of Obama, like Bernadette Dorn and her husband, embraced the 3 M's, Mao, Marx, and Marcuse. And they really started embracing the identity politics angle. Black Lives Matter, of course, picked it up, and Therese Cullors, one of the 3 founders, said, yeah, we're trained Marxists. We understand Marx dialogue, and that's what we're trying to do. And they had a Facebook page where they indicated that they were trying to tear down the American family, censor dangerous speech, on and on and on. When George Floyd came along and, the tapes were so handy, this prompted the latest chapter of critical race theory. So if you are familiar with the critical race theorists like Ibram K. Kendi, they're going to tell you that, the United States is systemically racist, and it cannot be fixed. There's no room for reform. It has to be junked. And what we have to have is a racist society where the oppressors make it up to the BIPOCs for all of the horrible things that they've done. And as you can see, Joe Biden, with the aid for farmers of color and some of the other things he's done, and the whole radical left of the Democrat Party has embraced critical race theory to a fare thee well. And then Robert comes along and says, well, at its root, it's historical analysis about the role and effects. No, he's one of these guys who's saying, this critical race theory is way overblown. This is just freedom of speech, and it's just the oppressors not wanting to bear the discomfort about talking about how slavery was legal in the United States in the Jim Crow era, et cetera, which just isn't true. It just isn't true. So thank you, Robert, for coming forward and identifying yourself. And we've got Michael Bavacqua here. And
just real quick, the last name of Marcuse, the first name of Marcuse is Herbert.
That's right, Herbert Marcuse, yeah. Yeah, he was one of the Frankfurt School guys. They were, all of them but one were of the Jewish persuasion. And, of course, those who would champion them say anybody who speaks ill against the Frankfurt School that's just an example of anti-Semitism. The fact that they were Jewish wouldn't have made a whole lot of difference, except that when Hitler came in 1933, they knew they had to skedaddle. Columbia University was trying to start something called the Social Research Institute. These guys are all very smart. They're all PhDs, very qualified, super smart guys. So Columbia latched onto them and brought them to the United States. Some of them bounced around a little bit, but they were the ones that started identity politics, which is the essence of critical race theory. So, Robert, nice try, but there really is a critical race theory. And I mentioned this yesterday. it's healthy for mature kids, I suppose, by the time they get to high school, juniors and seniors, to talk about some of the really bad parts of American history. The U.S. Constitution was a compromise because we had slave colonies and we have anti-slave colonies. And in order to put them all together into one country under one constitution, there had to be some compromises. So one of the compromises was that Congress could not pass a law outlawing the slave trade until 1808. Now, if you understand slavery, so a lot of the money made in the slave trade was buying and selling or importing slaves and selling them. In 1808, Congress did outlaw the slave trade. That was one of the compromises. Another compromise was the so-called 3/5 compromise that said when you have the census and you allocate representation in the House of Representatives and in the Electoral College, you count it, including people who are, except people who are otherwise held to service or labor. Constitution didn't use the word slave once, but the 3/5 clause obviously referred to people who were slaves. And it said when you apportion members of the House of Representatives, people that slave states only got 3/5, a 3/5 count for their slaves. In other words, you total up all the people, and then you take, and that's the first part of the number. Then the second part of the number is 3/5 of the slaves. So the CRT folks are saying, see, they were so racist. They said that Africans were only 3/5 of a person. Well, and that would be the surface analysis. But the real story is this. The northern colony said, you can't count those people at all. You want to count them for apportionment of your votes? They can't vote, so no, they can't count at all. So the compromise came out at 3/5. So there's no question that the compromise, the Constitution did have was compromised, and that slavery was a thriving part of the Southern economy up until 1861. And after the Civil War, when the Republicans caved in the Hayes-Tilden controversy and pulled the Army out of the South, Reconstruction ended. The political rights of former slaves were over. And the Democrat administrations in the states, with the help of their army, also known as the Ku Klux Klan, instituted Jim Crow laws, things like grandfather clauses, that lasted right up until the 1965 Civil Rights legislation, which was a Republican initiative. And you're still going to find people that have really poor racial attitudes in the United States, or probably anywhere else in the world. But to say that the United States is systemically racist, you can say, yeah, it was once, but to say that it is now, I always get out my article about Martin Luther King, which I hope I can find here quickly. Probably can't. Yeah, let's take a short break here while I look for that article.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Half a day. My name is Sasha Leigh Santos, your 2016 Miss Queen of the Pacific. For Pride Month, I encourage everyone to support the East of Guam LGBTQ Scholarship at the ULG Endowment Foundation. This scholarship was founded to help the young LGBTQ students achieve their academic goals. With your help, LGBTQ students who are facing challenges will be able to continue their education and make a positive impact on our island. Please visit give.ulg.edu or simply call 735-2957 for more information on how you can empower these future leaders of Guam.
Okay, so here we are again, and this is the story that I'm looking for. In 1964, Martin Luther King gave an interview to the BBC where he predicted there would be a black president in less than 40 years. 1964, 2004, right? Now, you younger folks don't remember 1964, but it wasn't long after that that Martin Luther King was assassinated.
The Beatles came to America.
The Beatles, yeah.
That's my history.
Yeah.
I was even born then.
And you had pictures. The newsreels ran film of firemen using fire hoses on African Americans on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and Bull Connor was a household word. I mean, we were really tied up in systemic racism at that time. No getting around it. But Martin Luther King said in less than 40 years, there would be an American president. I mean, a black American president. King did not say that in less than 40 years' time, there will have been a black female president of an Ivy League college, which we have had. He did not say in 40 years it'll be a black CEO of a Fortune 500 company. There have been several. He didn't, including the CEO of McDonald's. King didn't say in 40 years it will be a black governor of a state like Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, which has happened. He didn't say when 80% of blacks will no longer be poor, which is now the case. No, King suggested that we will have reached the promised land when Americans elect a black president. Why? And here's the key. Because in the privacy of the voting booth or the mail-in ballot, one can vote for whoever he wants. If a voter is racist, he or she can vote accordingly. King felt when Americans became fair-minded enough to elect a black president whom they felt qualified for the presidency, we then have reached a point where we are evaluating each other based on the content of our character rather than the color of our skin to the fullest degree realistically possible. But of course, for the critical race theory folks, that's not good enough. They don't want to give up on systemic racism. They want to use that as a lever. And you got the Robert Underwoods of the world who don't really know what critical racist theory is, or if they do and they pretend that they don't, wanting us to turn our backs and say, oh, this critical race theory, it's not a real thing. And we've been criticizing race, the whole thing in his column. The Robert Underwoods will have as much of a role as the CRT folks themselves in making sure that critical race theory survives. Because with champions like Robert, there will be a question of, is it a real thing? All you have to do is open your eyes and you'll know for sure that it is. What is CDC?
It's way off topic. I just put it in there and I told him you'll take a chance.
Yeah. Who is Patrick?
Oh, you know Patrick.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not interested. Okay, let's go on to the card. First item on the card is Shay versus Therese. And plus a word from Troy. The debate over a medical malpractice bill continues after Speaker Therese Dorlahi doubled down on her bill last Friday. You'll recall that she gave a press conference, and in her press conference she said when Tina Rose Munya Barnes said that Therese had not talked with the medical community, this was just wrong. So we have, in effect, the two of them calling one another liars is basically what we have. And Therese said, I'm sticking by this. On Monday morning, a local doctor told K57 that the bill will set the island's health care back. Bill 112, also known as the Medical Malpractice Bill, has received a lot of backlash from the medical community. Numerous healthcare providers have rallied and written letters to the legislature expressing their opposition to the bill, with their main concern being that Bill 112 will make doctors more vulnerable to frivolous claims and will increase the price of malpractice insurance. Dr. Thomas Shea, S-H-I-E-H, I found out the other day we have two Dr. Shays on the island.
Oh.
Yeah. So that means that we can compliment ourselves because it's no longer fair to say that our medical establishment is nothing but a one-horse shay. An expression you don't hear very much anymore, but still.
Usually in December.
Yeah. Numerous healthcare providers have rallied and written letters to the legislature, well, at least signed letters to the legislature, expressing their opposition to the bill, with their main concern being that Bill 112 will make doctors more vulnerable to frivolous claims and will increase the price of malpractice insurance. Dr. Thomas Shea is one of those who has been very vocal about his stance against the bill. I'm going to correct that sentence, all right? It's too long. Dr. Thomas Shea is one of those who has been very vocal about just about anything you can think about, right? Yeah. So to come out and say that he's been vocal about the bill, it's like saying, strangest thing, I went to the zoo and I saw a zebra, and you know what? He had stripes.
You are correct, mister.
Shea, who is currently in Hawaii, went on air with News Talk K57's Patty Arroyo, who always conducts saber-like interviews, and says this bill will do more harm than good for the island's healthcare system. He adds that though there are going to be haphazard cases every now and then, medicine is not perfect, and the island's focus should be continuing to improve healthcare as it's always evolving. All right, let's take a short break for the big halftime show here.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Grim discoveries in Florida. On Jack Callahan, Fox News, as searchers continue to tunnel into the rubble of a collapsed condominium building.
Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava made the grim announcement on the 5th day of searching what remains of the Champlain Tower South condo.
The number of confirmed deaths is 11. Tragically, 11.
The search is continuing with dogs hoping to catch a scent, as well as radar and sonar equipment used to hopefully find people still trapped. Officials say the time will soon come when the question of why the collapse happened will be answered. For now, search and rescue remains the priority.
Fox's Colonel Scott, 150 people remain unaccounted for. Tropical storm Danny has come ashore in the southeast.
Did make landfall just north of Hilton Head Island and will quickly weaken as it continues to push inland in a tropical depression by early Tuesday morning and then becoming a remnant low by Tuesday afternoon as it works toward northeastern Georgia.
That's meteorologist Bradford Ambrose of Fox 28 in Savannah, who says some areas were hit with 6 to 8 inches of rain. An excessive heat warning continues into Tuesday night for Seattle, but it will be cooler Tuesday as compared to Monday's 108 degrees.
Seattle and Portland will be in the lower 90s. Well, it was quite a bit different from what they've been seeing, but still well above normal. However, going into the interior, Pendleton, Oregon, probably 112, 114. Spokane 110, so it's still very warm.
National Weather Service meteorologist Brian Hurley. A federal judge has halted Nevada's plans to carry out its first execution in 15 years, ordering the death sentence for Zane Floyd be delayed until October at the earliest to give his attorneys time to examine the possible effects of the state's planned use of a 4-drug lethal injection cocktail that's not been used before. America is listening to Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Chili's is bringing you a full meal offer with 3 for Me for just $15. You get a beverage, a starter, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola or iced tea, pick a starter, then select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like Cajun pasta with grilled chicken, ranchero chicken tacos, or the savory Santa Fe burger. Dine in today or visit chilisguam.com for delivery and to-go options. Chili's 3 for Me for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, savor the moment.
Vaccinated or not, L.A. County is urging its residents to wear face masks in public buildings to slow the spread of the Delta variant of the coronavirus. Religion and tradition are hampering vaccination efforts in 3 states.
Communities in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Indiana are estimated to make up about 2/3 of the 345,000 Amish living in the U.S. But some health officials are raising red flags. Ohio's Holmes County has the largest concentration of Amish, but just 14% of that community is reportedly vaccinated. That's nowhere near herd immunity. Other counties are reporting even lower numbers. The Amish do not have any religious beliefs that forbid vaccines, but are less likely than the general population to get shots against preventable diseases. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Disney Cruise Lines postponing a test cruise that was to set sail today after inconsistent coronavirus test results among the passengers who'd volunteered for the cruise. They now hope to set sail next month. The U.S. Supreme Court Monday siding with a transgender teen in a dispute over bathrooms.
The Supreme Court deciding Monday to strike down a Virginia school board's request to reinstate its ban on transgender bathrooms. That case actually started back in the lower courts some 6 years ago when Gloucester High School student Gavin Grimm was told he needed to use the restroom corresponding to his gender at birth, which was female. Lower courts ruled in favor of Grimm, saying forcing him to use the women's bathroom would be disruptive to his education, causing the school board to appeal to the Supreme Court, where the justices rejected the appeal, leaving the lower court ruling in place, calling the bathroom ban unconstitutional. In Washington, I'm Kevin Cork, Fox News.
The Tampa Bay Lightning striking first in the Stanley Cup Finals, beating the Montreal Canadiens Monday night 5-1. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Circle K brings you the G-Dog. Get ready for a succulent and flavorful street hot dogs made famous in New York City. These dogs are made with 100% all beef and cooked in a delicious blend of spices for a plump, juicy hot dog experience that's bursting with flavor. Visit your nearest participating Circle K and dig in on the best hot dog experience on island. The G-Dog, served from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Available at Anigua, Dededo, and Ocean Vista Circle K locations only. Circle K, hey, take it easy.
Get your shot and win big prizes, Guam. The Office of the Governor and the Guam Visitors Bureau presents Vax and Win, Guam. Protect our community by getting your shot and enter online at visitguam.com/vax for a chance to win. Starting June 14th through July 21st, weekly prizes of $10,000 cash and a brand new car will be given away to lucky residents who are fully vaccinated. That's 6 weeks of Vax and Win opportunities. Some conditions apply. Log on to visitguam.com/vax for official promo rules or to submit your entry today.
Half a day, this is Josh here at APL. Our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com.
Another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. The marching band, the drill teams, the cheerleaders. Doesn't get any better than that. So coming right back into the card here, I was going to, I'm on medical malpractice because I've got Dr. Shea versus Therese Derlahi, and one of our regular callers wants to chime in here, a gentleman named Pete. Good afternoon, Pete.
Half a day, Uncle Bob. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Well, aside from Dr. Shea being vocal, I guess I've been pretty vocal about it on social media and also on the radio. So a certain senator asked to speak to me about why, I have the perspective that I had, that this bill would surely increase costs and services. And this is the way I think about it. Whether it's justified or not, doctors are very risk averse. And I have advised doctors before in my official capacity about all kinds of things, about HIPAA, about malpractice and all that other stuff. And they're just very, very risk averse and love to err on the side of caution. So whether or not this bill does anything to justify, it's just like the stock market. They're going to make emotional decisions. And the tangible result is going to be, it is going to increase costs. But that's a business decision that they're making. So, whether or not it's justified, whether or not there's reality to justify increased costs, it's going to happen just based on their perceptions. That's my 2 cents.
Well, I think you're right. I would kind of add into what you're saying here that at least in that forum, when reason and emotion collide, emotion oftentimes carries the day.
Oh, yeah.
And on the one hand, you've got you got David Lebowski. I mean, if there was anything that would stir up the emotions in anybody, including a hard-hearted old guy like me, it's the situation that he had to live through.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate. But, I mean, he also, you got to understand, is a man on a mission, right?
Yes.
And I have likened him to, the sky is falling, when the sky really isn't falling. So that's one thing you got to consider, too, is you got to look at the messenger sometimes and not the message.
Well, a British philosopher and socialist, George Bernard Shaw, once upon a time said that all progress depends on unreasonable men.
That is true.
And there's a lot of truth to that. So I have characterized it as, on the one hand, the famous Latin maxim, fiat justitia ruat caelum, let justice be done if the heavens fall, right? That's the David Lebowski position. And then the doctors are saying, well, yeah, but we got to be pragmatic here, otherwise you're going to wind up with a good news, bad news. The good news is...
The other one is throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, well, the doctors would say that you're going to wind up with a good news, bad news. The good news will be you could sue doctors for malpractice. The bad news is there won't be any doctors left to sue.
Yeah, and this is one of the true cases, if it comes to fruition, it would be one of the true cases of irony. Ironically, a lot of people misuse irony, right? And so if Bill 112, which purports to improve healthcare on Guam, actually takes it backwards, and that's a true example of irony.
Yeah. Well, lawyers understand that as a general proposition, a good settlement a bad settlement ordinarily beats a good lawsuit. So there's some room for compromise here between these two parties, but indicating a desire to compromise too early in the game tends to be misconstrued as weakness and lessens the possibility of compromise. But I've got some ideas of compromises that could be reached. I'm going to wait until the hearings are over before I speak.
Yeah, just don't send those ideas to James Moylan, because no one will listen to him. I'm joking.
James Moylan is the reverse E.F. Hutton, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for calling, Pete.
All right. Thanks, Uncle Bob.
Yeah. James Moylan. Yeah, James Moylan writes a lot of letters, so.
Well, we know the governor doesn't listen to him.
That's for sure. Yeah.
I've written this and kind of like you, I'm waiting to hear a lot more on this.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, if Bill 112 passes into law, the patients are going to lose. And if it stands as is and nothing ever changes, the patients are going to lose. So that's how it is right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised that our Carl hasn't called and reminded us that Thomas Sowell said that there are no solutions to problems. There are only alternatives, and that's exactly where we are right now. We're looking at alternatives, neither one of which is particularly attractive. And of course we have, and it's the way it should be, we have people advancing their own professional or personal interests in the process. I'm not quite done with Tom Shea, but this would be a good time to take another. He changed his mind, huh?
He wants to make sure he's on the right topic.
What topic does he want to be on?
He was still on critical race theory, so he's going to listen in and catch up. I guess run alongside and then grab on when he can.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll give him. That's something I really like talking about. So, after I finish this, we'll go back to critical race theory.
Sure.
Okay. So, Thomas Shea. Thomas Shea says that the bill will do more harm than good for the island's healthcare system. He adds that though there are going to be haphazard cases every now and then, medicine is not perfect, and the island's focus should be continuing to improve healthcare as it's always evolving. Now, I do remember this about Thomas Shea, and that is that when we were looking for an abortionist, when our governor was beating the bushes looking for an abortionist, Thomas Shea said we shouldn't be doing that. We should be concentrating on finding people that come to Guam to save lives. Yeah, so
I do remember that.
Yeah. Here's a quote. We can't keep the standard of care the same like Speaker Terlahi has mentioned. We cannot. We need to continue bringing specialists to Guam, and we've been doing it, and they're coming. We've got specialists. We've got post-surgery. We've got orthopedic surgeons coming in. We also got maternal fetal medicine, Shea said. He added, but Bill 112 is going to sidetrack that and it's going to reduce access to care, and that's what I'm concerned about. I'm going to continue to fight for patients' access. I think that's going to be important for us, and I hope the senators are going to uphold them. You know, with patients' lives at stake, I think we need to ensure that we continue to raise the standards. According to Shea, the writers of the bill who claim to have communicated with the medical community have not spoken to him. So how can you say that you've spoken to the medical community unless you've listened to Tom Shea?
Shea, it isn't so.
He says they've not spoken to him or any other health care providers on island regarding Bill 112. Now, Shea must have some form of telepathy, because 477 countersigned Tina's letter. He is somehow in communication with all 477, and he knows that Therese never spoke to any of them. According to Shea, the writers of the bill who claim to have communicated with the medical, as you were, he says that it's just not true at all, and that if that is what Tello and Therese Terlahi are saying, and that it was co-sponsored, that is not true. He's saying that Tello said the same thing.
We have no idea.
Yeah, but we probably have a pretty good idea how we'd evaluate it.
Did he get her permission to say her name?
I don't think so. He's in a heap of trouble. It's unethical, and it should be filed as an ethics complaint because that's absolutely untrue. Yeah, file that with the Board of Medical Examiners, right?
Now he's the stretchiest doctor on island.
Really? Shea added, the speaker at her press conference said the standard of care isn't going to change. Why would you choose a bill that keeps the standard the same? As the healthcare chair, she needs to make sure to communicate and work with us to ensure we raise the standard of care. Not keeping it the same, that's unacceptable. Yeah, now let's construct a straw man here, right?
This is where we're getting to the real reason why he went on the radio.
Because he had this straw man that he propped up out at the Acanta, broadcast Acanta there. And then after he had this straw man all in place, he went into the boonies and cut off a Tongan stem, came over and just beat the hell out of that straw man, right?
Well, he went on the radio because they wouldn't let him do it at Skinner Plaza.
Probably not, yeah. Yeah, they've seen enough of him down at Skinner Plaza. Under current law, those who wish to sue a medical provider for malpractice must first submit their claim to arbitration. An arbitration panel is then convened that's composed of an attorney, a physician, and a third party that's neither a doctor nor a lawyer. A normal person, in other words. Yeah. and is not a representative of healthcare or insurance company. Bill 112 was introduced because the legislature found that costs of arbitration are so high that it prohibits many on the island from pursuing a malpractice claim. These are estimates. There are estimates that arbitration can cost up to $50,000, well outside the reach of most residents of the island. However, according to Dr. Shea, arbitration is much more affordable than litigation. Dr. Shea, stay in your own lane. You know, I won't tell you. I won't give you any advice at all about birthing babies.
It's like Star Trek. I'm a doctor, not a lawyer.
Yeah. So much for Dr. Shea. And then Troy chimes in and had a post yesterday. Barnes admits Guam doctors aren't being held accountable. Vice Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, in answering a social media post critical of her stance in defense of doctors, admitted that as the law is written today, doctors are not being held accountable for malpractice. Quote, "We want to hold doctors accountable, but we can't do so at the risk of jeopardizing health care," Ms. Barnes said in reply to a woman named Reina Sanchez, who wrote to her, "It's still not right to force people to give up their rights to a trial through the MMAA for the special few that line your pockets deep, okay?" And then Tina comes back and says, "We want to hold doctors accountable, but we can't do so at the risk of jeopardizing access to health care." Wow. As to the reference to lining of pockets, Ms. Sanchez may be onto something. A 2019 review of campaign contributions reports of the 15 senators of the 15th legislature and the governor showed indeed doctors and medical industry professionals account for a healthy portion of the political donations made to winning candidates. And finally, there's a quote here from Therese Terlahi. "Whether poor people can access the justice system is what we're trying to accomplish with this bill." I'll go back to Tina's quote one more time. "We want to hold doctors accountable, but we can't do so at the risk of jeopardizing access to health care."
In my campaign.
Yeah, that's quite a comment. Yeah. And the other day we had our Fred, who put great emphasis on accountability. And I had to explain to our Fred that even in the absence of the MMAA, medical lawsuits for medical malpractice is a rather approximate way of holding doctors accountable. There are better ways of holding doctors accountable than putting them through the judicial process or the fear of being put through the judicial process. Okay, so coming up, getting pretty close here to the 7th inning stretch. Why don't we do the 7th inning stretch, Jose?
Okay, right on it.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Okay, seventh inning, Wrigley Field in Chicago. I just went out, strolled around out in the bleachers a little bit, stretched out a little bit. Seventh inning stretch. We got 2 more innings of Tall Tales today, and next on the card is Tina versus the Insular Cases. Tina's going to just beat the heck out of those Insular Cases someday. And what I have in my hand here is a letter to the editor that Tina sent to the Post yesterday. She still doesn't get it. She just doesn't get it. Now, it's unfortunate for the doctors that, you know, Tina is your champion, and you'll see why. The headline of this story is Congress must act on granting parity to 4 million Americans in the territory. And Tina says, last month I had the opportunity to testify in support of the United States House of Representatives Resolution 279, which I completely don't understand. Which calls for the rejection of the insular cases that allowed the United States government to extend unilateral power over unincorporated territories. So you got to do the obligatory bashing of the insular. The fact that you don't know what they're about doesn't stop you from saying, you know, the insular cases are really, really bad. And of course, that's the reason that we're having this controversy here with medical malpractice. It all goes back to the insular cases. Beep, beep. Yeah. Now, while the focus of H.R. 279 calls for the reversal of the insular cases, testimony from various representatives of the territories elicited the need to address parity among states and territories. Congress does not have to wait for the courts to finally address the injustices of the past. Because the courts are never going to do that, Tina. That's not what courts do. It has the power to do so right now. Congress, under its plenary powers, can pass legislation that would create equity. I don't think that's the word she wants to use. Among states and territories as it relates to the application of federal programs, including but not limited to Medicaid and supplemental security income. Do you think she finally read my letter to the editor?
Kind of, because she absolutely used the wrong word. It's not equity.
It's not at all. Not equity at all. But you remember I wrote a letter to the editor during the time that that Resolution 56 was being discussed, and I said, forget about the insular cases. They're the best friends we've got. if you're going to be talking to Grijalva, tell him to give us SSI. Tell him to give us this other stuff because Congress has the power to do it. But instead of doing that, she stuck to her gun. She beat up on the Navy. She made all kinds of misstatements about the insular cases. And to me, she basically, especially if you listen to Amata Coleman Radewagen, who spent about 25 minutes on the show explaining why she didn't want to see the insular cases overruled. Tina made a fool of herself, is basically what she did.
Big time.
Yeah. And that, doctors, that's your champion, Tina Rose Munya Barnes. So she goes on to say the current financing structure of Medicaid in the territories differs from state programs in two key respects. Firstly, territories are limited to an annual ceiling on federal financial participation. While states receive federal matching funds for each dollar spent without a cap, territories receive a set amount of federal funding each year regardless of increases in enrollment and use of services. Secondly, the federal medical assistance percentage is statutorily set at 55% for territories, whereas the state formula is based on income per capita. Well, she finally got down and did a little work and found out what the programs are about, right?
Participation.
Yeah. These two policies have led to chronic underfunding of Medicaid in the territories and place great strain on Guam and other territorial governments. Knowing the impact of Wuhan virus has had on the territories and acknowledging the inequity, I think she means inequality, the words are not synonyms one for the other, of the application of Medicaid through H.R. 1865, Guam's Medicaid cap was temporarily increased from about 18 million to 127 million. It also temporarily increased the federal match from 55% to 83%. However, these are temporary measures set to expire at the end of September 2021. In order to maintain the current level of services and expand the program and services to our most vulnerable population, a permanent solution from Congress is needed.
You don't say.
Yeah, wow, Tina. A mind like a steel trap.
Is that plagiarism?
Now, if for some reason the Supreme Court had overruled Downs versus Bidwell yesterday, would this have made any difference?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Yet she introduced this letter with it.
Yeah. Inequity is also present in the application of SSI, which is available to eligible individuals in each territory. Among the U.S. territories, only residents of the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas receive SSI benefits. And the reason for that is they were smart enough to ask for it, unlike us until now. Yeah, that was one of their provisions in the covenant. We don't want to do any of the same kind of negotiating that the Northern Marianas did. We would rather sit around and bitch about a 19-4 speech by a naval officer and complain about the insular cases and talk about all the injustices that our people have had to suffer. Yeah, now if these things happen, if we got SSI and these other things, there would be just much less to bitch about. So what would happen to our quest for separation? Then she goes on and says, inequity is... Someone send that girl a dictionary. Inequity is also present in the application of SSI, which is available to eligible individuals in each state. I read that already. The solution to addressing this inequity is simple. Apply the same benefits to the nearly 4 million American citizens living in the territories that their fellow Americans in each state have access to. Governor Leon Guerrero and Congressman Michael San Nicolas have already expressed their support for this extension, and I join them. Oh, that's it. Man, when people see Tina's name, talk about a slam dunk.
Are there 400 co-signers?
Yeah. 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 What was it? Were they called co-sign? Yeah.
Co-conspirators?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Co-signatories.
In the hopes of pushing this issue forward, I wrote a letter to Representative Frank Pallone Jr. asking him to call the Supreme Court and tell them to reverse the insular cases. Now, she wrote a letter to Frank Pallone Jr., chairman of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, encouraging Congress to maintain current funding levels and matching requirements for Medicaid program and for the extension of federal programs like SSI. We can no longer afford to allow the separate but equal doctrine to be applied to the territories.
Nope.
Yeah. No, we can't. Now, of course, no one wants to talk about the fact that, if Tina really wants us to have all of the same rights as people in the States, she should write to Pallone and say, please repeal that part of the Organic Act that says that the income tax laws enforced in the United States shall likewise be in effect in Guam and shall constitute a separate territorial tax, which are paid into the Treasury of Guam and not the U.S. Treasury.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, if we really want to go for all the constitutional rights, we should have the right to pay our taxes to the IRS, not the rev tax. Wow. Okay, so that pretty well covers my local stuff. I'm going to spend a little time with national stuff, much of which comes back to the same thing. This whole idea that Robert Underwood is championing, the political correctness is a good thing, critical race theory is a myth. Republicans are always looking for conspiracies.
The critical race theory is just a label, which really got to me.
Just a label, that's all, yeah. So I've got a story here that ran in the New York Post, yeah, that did such a good job on Hunter Biden's laptop. The only paper in New York that did, the other one just shut down on that. And it's by Bernadette Hogan, Carl Campanile, and Bruce Golding. Brandis warns students not to say picnic, rule of thumb, calling those words oppressive. The rule of thumb at this ultra-woke college, which is Brandeis University, is don't say rule of thumb. Yeah. Students and faculty at Brandeis University are being urged to stop using words and phrases like, quote, picnic, trigger warning, and even rule of thumb because of what a campus counseling service calls their links to violence and power to reinforce systems of oppression. Yeah, don't use the word picnic. It is linked to violence, and it will reinforce systems of oppression. A compendium of potential, and this is not Babylon B, and you're not going to have to honk the horn here. This is not sarcasm or satire.
This is real.
This is real. It makes satire a whole lot harder to accomplish, doesn't it? Yeah, a compendium of potentially oppressive language posted on the school's website by its Prevention, Advocacy, and Resource Center also lists loads of examples of gender-exclusive, ableist, and culturally appropriative terminology that can get in the way of meaningful dialogue. The oppressive language list, first reported by Fox News. Well, of course, you know, that's it right there. It can't be any good. If it's something you hear on Fox News or Donald Trump said it, forget it. Was developed recently as part of the Prevention Advocacy and Resource Center's response to anti-blackness program, and is always growing based on suggestions from the community, according to a web page titled Holding Ourselves Accountable. Boy, such wonderful people there at Branda, holding ourselves accountable. As a community, we can strive to remove language that may hurt those who have experienced violence from our everyday use. The Prevention, Advocacy, and Resource Center says, these recommendations for more neutral language are brought forth by students who have been subject to violence or have worked with others who are healing from violence, as well as students who have sought out our advanced training in intervening in potentially violent situations. According to the oppressive language list, the word picnic has been associated with lynchings of black people in the United States.
Say what?
Yeah. The word picnic has been associated with lynchings of black people in the United States, during which white spectators were said to have watched while eating.
That you what?
Yeah. Again, not satire, not sarcasm, not exaggeration, not the Babylon Bee. So they're saying don't use the word picnic. Yeah.
Wow.
A suggestive alternative is outdoor eating,
which essentially is a picnic.
Oi! What was it?
Oops,
Gosh.
Didn't mean to trigger you there, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, it's falling apart here.
I know how you are about ants.
Yeah. Okay, rule of thumb can be replaced with general rule, because the former allegedly comes from an old British law allowing men to beat their wives with sticks no wider than their thumb. Now
They're making this up.
That is actually true, and I've explained this on Tall Tales in the past. In the past, I've mentioned that a famous British jurist known as Lord Coke, C-O-K-E, pronounced Cook, was the one who established the rule of thumb, and the rule of thumb was a rule of mercy. And women's libbers will like this, because back in merry old England, when a man and a woman married, it was called coverture, and the man and the woman became one at law. And of course, the one was actually the man. And women were not permitted to enter contracts, take all kinds of legal maneuvers without the husband's permission. But a husband was liable for the misconduct of the wife. He was liable for the wife's torts. So if the wife, kills somebody in a horse and buggy accident or something like that, the husband would have to pony up the damages. And the reasoning at the time was, well, since the husband is liable for the wife's conduct, he's got to have some way of controlling the wife. So the way of controlling the wife was getting some kind of a stick or rod and whipping her. This is the way the story is told. But Lord Coke came along with a rule of mercy and said that rod can be no larger than the man's thumb. Mercy, right? Now, this all sounds very funny and very quaint, etc., in accordance with 21st century morals, ethics, and behavior. And that, of course, is called presentism. But at the time, that was acceptable. And even a famous jurist like Lord Coke would come along with a rule of mercy called a rule of thumb. Now, of course, nobody's going to learn anything here. They're just going to be told, don't use it. And then going on to the next item, when it comes to trigger warning, an alert that spoken, written, or recorded material may be alarming to certain people based on their experiences. Possible alternatives include content note. Now, I thought they were going to criticize it based on that Netflix presentation called Tiger King. If you happen to see that. Quote, the word trigger has connections to guns for many people. We can give the same heads up using language less connected to violence. Guns do, in fact, have triggers. U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik, a Republican from Glens Falls, New York, who's co-sponsoring a bill called the Campus Free Speech and Restoration Act, called the list an all-out assault on the First Amendment, an example of the far-left cancel culture happening in our schools. Now, Robert Underwood's probably going to write her a nasty letter. The far left's radical overhaul of education is un-American. They push so-called safe spaces to eliminate diversity of thought, critical thinking, and intellectual curiosity, and replace it with socialist brainwashing, groupthink, Marxist ideology like critical race theory, she said in a prepared statement. Now they're weaponizing words like police, policeman, and picnic, listing them as oppressive. Former City University of New York trustee Jeff Weisenfeld called the list idiocy, lunacy, and a disgrace. We're not talking about the N-word here, he said. It's a tyranny of the leftist minority to instill fear in people. If you take it to the extreme, you end up with tyranny. Westenfeld, the son of Holocaust survivors, added, it's hurtful that this is happening at Brandeis. Louis Brandeis was one of the first Jewish Supreme Court justices. He would be appalled by this. The oppressive language list surfaced just weeks after Brandeis administrator was revealed to have said on social media that, quote, all white people are racist in that all white people have been conditioned in a society where one's racial identity determines life experiences, outcomes, and whiteness is the norm and default. That includes me, added Kate Slater, Assistant Dean of Graduate Student Affairs. Brandeis is located outside Boston. Last year enrolled about 3,500 undergraduates and 2,000 grad students, according to its website. Tuition costs nearly $60,000 a year, and room and board an additional $16,450. In a prepared statement, a Brandeis spokesman said the oppressive language list was developed by students who have noted that many people who have experienced violence may be further harmed by the language that others use in speaking with them. This list is in no way an accounting of terms that Brandeis students or faculty or staff are prohibited from using or must substitute instead. Spokesperson Julie Jett said, it's simply a resource that can be accessed by anyone who wants to consider their own language in an effort to be respectful of others who may have different reactions to certain terms and phrases. Boy, I'm sure glad they tipped us off about picnic.
You know, they could have wrote a book or a list of interesting phrases and their origins, but to go and ban everything, I mean, now they can't even watch a Roy Rogers show without getting triggered.
That's his horse's name, Roy Rogers and Triggered. Well, I got an interesting WhatsApp here a little while ago from a friend who shows a sign that's posted at the entrance to a dirt track. So imagine this standard sign, except it's red, white, and blue. And this is what it says. Welcome. You are now entering a dirt racetrack. You may encounter American flags, the national anthem, prayer, and dirt flying. If any of these is offensive to you, it offends you, go home. I couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so we probably got a couple of callers here who just want to pick up we got another Joe and our Carl who probably just want to pick up the phone and say, picnic, picnic, picnic. All right, I'll get to another Joe and then our Carl right after we arrive at Churchill Downs.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Hey! Big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Okay, so, I didn't get a chance to get the guy back in on critical race theory, did I? If he can call in now, it's
another Joe.
Oh, it's another Joe. Wanted to talk about critical race theory. Now he wants to talk about bad words.
Same thing.
Same thing. Okay. Another Joe. Joe, are you ready? Are you ready?
I hope so.
Picnic, picnic, picnic.
Oh man, that hurt. But unfortunately, I'm wearing a Kevlar jacket.
Good for you, another Joe.
Yeah. So you were talking about words that cannot be used, and rule of thumb can't be used. You have to use general rule, but then you can't use general because it's military oriented. I think someone's going to get offended about that.
Yeah.
And it's going to get to the point where you get to use sign language, and it's only going to be approved sign language.
And I have though prohibited the use of the words grandfather clause on Tall Tales because that really does have a racist meaning that most people. I suspect these folks at Brandeis probably use it all the time, But go on, another Joe.
So you're making me think the issue of the rule of thumb. There's the movie The Quiet Man with John Wayne and I think Scarlett O'Hara, and she hands him a stick to beat him with.
Maureen O'Hara.
Sorry, Maureen O'Hara.
Scarlett didn't make it out of Gone with the Wind.
My bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
So she hands him a stick to beat him with, and he looks at her, and he just breaks it and throws it, and it's just interesting. Like, what's that about? But yeah, it touches on really, that's part of the culture. There's this whole different attitude and transition between Anglo culture in the UK and Anglo-American culture, and people are kind of confusing, I guess, some of the issues. But they don't refer to the issues in the right context, or they're the history of the context. So and just not pointing out that Democrats have been the instigators of the Ku Klux Klan, mostly Democrat orientated, and at the time, and it's convenient to leave all these facts out. And so, they need to revisit. I think Republicans, they just don't want. Republicans are for small government and not interfering and letting things sometimes play out. Maybe a lot of people are not comfortable with letting things play out. So, Democrats, they want constant regulation, constant interference, constant, involvement. And I think that's pretty much what they use to their advantage. You say, well, they must not care because they don't want to get involved. But the whole point is small government and not getting involved, not interfering too much. So in the long term, people are going to have to decide. These younger generations and the older generations kind of comprehend and understand the issue of not having the government interfere too much. But the younger generations are going to have to start paying attention and figuring out. That's pretty much the better of the ideas. So, we're at a learning curve here, and everything goes back, as you say, to this influence of critical race theory. And at what point is there any good use of it? You got Bureau of Indian Affairs. I don't know. There's bad things, and the Democrats keep pushing the envelope. They talk about not having I forget the word you used. So was it I want to say escalate, but that's not the word you used. I think it was making it more extreme, or I forget the word you use, but that's exactly what the Democrats use. They keep pushing the issue. They keep, making it more and more extreme, and then making use of it to their advantage. Will become their useful idiots, so to speak. But anyway, I better leave some time for Carl.
Yeah, Carl's chomping at the bit to get online. Thanks for calling again.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, so here comes the most dangerous man in the room.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon.
Hey, Carl. Do you want to say picnic a few times just to anger the liberals?
Picnic, picnic, picnic.
There you go.
I'll just keep it at 3 for now, so as not to cause too much stress.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on these word origins. I've seen books of word origins, and if they're really going to do this, how many hundreds of words would we have to toss out? Who had, that had really bad origins? That'd be a lot of words. I've used rule of thumb. I've used picnic probably a few hundred times, over my lifetime. I've never had any, a bad intent, not even one time. I didn't even know the origin of these words, and I didn't care. And 99% of the people that use them don't know and don't care.
Well, Carl, I keep wondering what happened to a often stated rule that everyone understood when I was a youngster. It went like this: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Huh?
Remember that one?
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I took it to heart, and I grew up with that, so I don't care what words you use around me or even in my direction. I'd take offense if you started using sticks and stones, but the words, let it go. Right?
Yeah. But, I was watching something recently that talked about how Dr. Spock, not the one from Star Trek, but the one that wrote the best-selling book, the Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he was actually influenced by some of the philosophers of the I'm trying to think of the name, the Frankfurt School. And he wrote this, I think maybe it was in the 60s. It was a best-selling book, sold millions of copies. But his teachings were the seeds that started the self-esteem movement, which has had such terrible repercussions on young people. When they become, they think they know everything, and they are extremely sensitive, very brittle, to people challenging their opinion. I think this all goes back to Spock, which goes back to the Frankfurt School. And anyway, I just wanted to weigh in on that. I've used those words. I've used a few hundred words.
Yeah, well, let's use this one, Carl. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.
All right, Bob. It's always good listening.
All right.
All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Now 11 dead. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. In the collapse of a South Florida condo building with the discovery of 2 bodies on Monday, there are 150 people still unaccounted for. The fire chief insists it's still a search and rescue mission, not ready yet to call it a recovery operation. Inspectors will pore over a similar building nearby today.
The Champlain Tower South's sister building, which was built at roughly the same time back in 1981 and a few blocks away, will be thoroughly inspected later this morning. Residents there have not been told to evacuate, but if they choose to, the city of Surfside will find them hotel rooms.
Fox's Phil Keating. President Biden telling White House reporters Monday he is not threatening to veto an infrastructure compromise bill if it's not coupled with an additional spending package.
Bottom line, infrastructure is exactly what we negotiated.
This despite Friday's declaration from House Speaker Pelosi there'd be no infrastructure bill without the additional spending bill. There's been a response to the U.S. airstrikes on Iranian-backed militia in Syria.
Pro-Shia militias fired multiple rockets at U.S. forces in Syria, targeting a U.S. coalition base at the oil field in Deir ez-Zor. A coalition spokesman said there were no injuries. U.S. officials described the airstrikes as necessary, appropriate, and deliberate, designed to deter Iran and its proxies.
Fox's Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon. Northern California is shaken by a small earthquake early Monday evening, felt mostly in the areas south and east of San Francisco. The Pacific Northwest continues to sizzle. 116 degrees in Portland, Oregon Monday, 108 in Seattle. But it will be cooler today, only in the low 90s. That's still about 20 degrees above normal. America is listening to Fox News.